All right, hi everyone. My name is Nika, and I'm here with my other conference assistant, Jillian, and we are the conference coordinating team here at MassURC. So today we're going to go through how to write a research abstract for the MassURC. This is the one thing that you need to submit to the hub in advance to the conference, and it's a good thing to begin thinking about if you haven't already. The deadline for abstract submissions this year is Friday, February 21st, so you guys have some time. So for some of you, you may have written a research abstract before, so this will kind of serve as a refresher. But if this is something new to you, then we're here to kind of give you a step-by-step process about how to write the abstract, and we kind of want to give you a good guide so you have everything you need in order to succeed with your abstract. So first, we're going to break down the basics. So what is a research abstract? A research abstract is a brief summary that encapsulates your research. Lengthwise, it's typically a paragraph long, and on the hub, we have a 250 word limit. And the purpose of it is to act as a preview that captures the core of your work. So you can kind of think of it as a snapshot of what you've done and what you've found. And it's a quick glimpse that kind of sets the scene of your research. To give a little context, in the academic world, when people are researching a topic or doing a literary review, they'll often just read abstracts to get a sense of your research. And this determines if they want to download the full paper and dive into the research further. So kind of think of it as your elevator pitch for your work. So what does a research abstract consist of? So as you can see on the screen, we have the four things we're breaking it down into. And first, we have the introduction, and Jillian is going to begin by explaining that.
Okay, so first we have the introduction. The purpose of this section is to introduce your research question or problem. So this is where you'll provide background for your audience. Here you'll show what is already known about your topic, as well as what is unknown and what will be discovered through your research. For example, in this study, we investigate the impact of social media on academic performance. You want to keep it clear and concise in order to avoid losing the engagement of your audience. So second, we have the research methods. The purpose of this section is to enable the reader to understand how you conducted your research. You want to include information such as sample size, duration of the study, and so on. For example, we conducted a survey of 300 students and analyzed the data using statistical models. Be sure to provide enough detail for clarity without overwhelming the reader, and without revealing the findings to your audience. Next up are your results. This is arguably the most important part of your research, as those who read your abstract are likely curious about its findings. You'll want to focus on summarizing your key findings without interpretation. For example, our findings reveal a positive correlation between social media use and lower GPA. You don't have to include all of your results in this short abstract, as this will distract from your most relevant findings. Now for the conclusion. The purpose of the conclusion is to highlight the significance of your findings and show what it all means in the bigger picture. For example, the sentence, "These results underscore the need for educational interventions to address social media distractions." This sentence allows the writer to connect their findings to real-world implications. Find a way to show the significance that your work holds to the reader.
So some tips about when you're writing your abstract. A really important thing is to be concise. You want to aim for clarity and brevity when talking about your research, and you don't want to drag it on for too long. Another really important thing is to use clear language. You want to avoid using too much technical jargon, and make your abstract accessible to a larger audience. So obviously your research might include a lot of technical information, but you want to make sure that someone reading this is going to understand it, not knowing too much of a background about it. Another really important thing is to highlight key points. Make sure it's easy for the reader to tell what's important in your abstract and what isn't. And some common mistakes to avoid. So you want to avoid unnecessary details and try to not go too deep into the trenches of what you're talking about in your project, and just kind of stick to the essentials of your research. Again, you don't want to overwhelm the reader with too much information. They're just using this as kind of an elevator pitch and just a preview of what you've been doing, and you don't want to overwhelm them. Another important thing is obviously to proofread for clarity. You want to remember to go back over your abstract and maybe even have a friend read it over so that you don't miss any errors or gaps in your writing before submitting. Another benefit to this is the fact that maybe your friend doesn't know as much about your research as you do, so having someone look over it and understand it who's not as familiar could be a really good way to see if your abstract is ready. And again, and lastly, something really important is to provide context. Remember that your audience is likely unfamiliar with the work that you're doing, and you want to make sure you have sufficient background information so that your audience understands your research. But again, you don't need to go too much into that because you want to make sure it's concise enough.
All right, so this is just a reminder that the next information session, how to create a research poster, is going to take place on Tuesday, April 1st at 7 p.m. So if you are on the email list for us, you can find the registration. It'll be sent out soon. And anyone else, it can be found on our Instagram or on the hub.
All right, thank you guys so much for attending today's info session. Before we get into the questions, I just want to clarify that we cannot answer abstract specific questions. So if you guys have any general questions about guidelines for your abstract that aren't specific to your research, we can help answer those. But if they're going to be specific to the research you've done or to your specific abstract, we'd like you to use the email conference@honors.umass.edu for those questions. But if anyone has any general questions, feel free to ask now. I see a question in the chat if the slides will be accessible. This info session is being recorded and it's going to be posted on the MassURC Hub in a couple days, as well as getting sent out in the newsletter. So you will be able to access these slides and see this info session again in a couple of days after the recording is prepared.
So we're also just going to touch on the fact that some of you might not have results to your research when you are submitting your abstract, and that's completely okay. That can be something that you add to your poster and you can present on the date of the conference.
Yeah, so I see that Alexa asked if research isn't complete, if you're still recruiting. Yeah, that's totally fine as long as you're kind of clarifying what point in your research you're at. That's totally okay. It's not concern that you're not completely done with your research at the point of the abstract submission deadline.
Yeah, so it's totally okay to not have results in your abstract. You can't revise your abstract once it is submitted to us, but again, that can just be something that is added to your poster board that you will present on the day of the conference. Yeah, you can definitely talk about the hypothesis, and maybe even just include that like the results are not found yet. Because again, this is just a summary of what research you have done at the time. You won't be able to come in and add any results, but the hypothesis is a good thing to talk about in your abstract if you don't have results yet. And yes, the abstract is like a short summary of whatever your research is about.
All right, before we go ahead and end the meeting, is there any last final questions anyone wants to drop in the chat or ask? All right, if that's it, thank you guys so much for joining today.